My name is Ryan. When Rebecca, my wife, kept mentioning how she just didn't feel turned on anymore, she had no clue her sister, who happened to be staying with us at the time, would offer a response that would leave everyone in shock. Rebecca and I met in a very traditional way, arranged through a mutual family connection, my aunt, to be specific. She gently suggested I meet this woman she knew well, saying we might be a good match. According to her, Rebecca was a kind-hearted, thoughtful person, but she also warned me that she was extremely reserved. Not shy exactly, but distant, someone who preferred solitude, didn't thrive in social situations, and struggled to connect with people who expected liveliness and charm. And the reason she thought we'd be compatible? Because I'm the same way. I'm not unfriendly, but I'm definitely not the center of attention type. I've always been more comfortable in quiet spaces. Give me a book in a peaceful corner, and I'm content. My family always teased me about how I could sit with someone for hours without talking and still call it quality time. That's just who I am. Stillness brings me peace. So to my aunt, pairing me with Rebecca seemed ideal. Two low-key, drama-free people. I didn't have strong expectations when I agreed to meet her. No butterflies, no nerves, just curiosity. Our first meeting was over coffee. It was a little clumsy, filled with long pauses. But it didn't feel forced. There wasn't any pressure to entertain or impress. We talked when we had something to say, and when we didn't, we simply sat in silence. Some might call it boring, but for me, it felt genuine. She wasn't trying to pretend, and neither was I. That initial conversation led to a second, then a third. We didn't rush anything. We took our time, slowly learning each other's quirks and rhythms. Over 6 months, our bond deepened. I discovered she loved classical music and disliked anything loud or chaotic, especially reality TV. She appreciated routine and found comfort in rainy weather. She learned about my love for aimless walks and my obsession with organizing my bookshelves. Eventually, I asked her to be my girlfriend. She was hesitant. I remember her asking, "What if I'm too boring for you?" I reassured her I wasn't looking for fireworks or drama. I liked her just as she was. Our relationship was always calm. No big arguments, no intense romantic highs or lows. Just consistent affection, kindness, and respect. The kind of connection that felt safe. With our family's support, we eventually got married. We thought that because we'd built such a strong foundation during our time dating, marriage would be an easy transition. But it wasn't. One area we struggled with was intimacy. Even while dating, that part of our relationship had always been a bit off. I didn't want to see it at the time, because everything else worked so well. But in truth, physical closeness was always uncomfortable for her. She would tense up or seem disconnected whenever we got close. I hoped things would change after marriage. I assumed that with the commitment and deeper emotional trust, she'd open up more in that way. But the same barriers remained. The same excuses showed up, tired, stressed, not in the mood. Our moments of intimacy became so rare. It was almost as if we were roommates rather than a couple. And even when it did happen, it lacked connection. It felt more like an obligation she was fulfilling rather than a moment she genuinely wanted. It hurt, especially when we talked about wanting kids and creating a home full of love and energy. How were we supposed to get there when we couldn't even reach each other on the most basic level of affection? I didn't want to guilt her or pressure her into anything. I respected her boundaries, but I also couldn't ignore how lonely it felt. So, I quietly started looking for answers. I read advice columns, watched videos on rekindling relationships, and tried to find subtle ways to bring romance back. I made dinner plans, reserved tables at restaurants she liked, tried to set the mood without making it obvious I was hoping for more. I was doing everything I could, silently, hoping she'd meet me halfway. But what happened next wasn't something I ever saw coming, and it changed everything. I used to plan surprises and short getaways, little things I thought might bring us closer. Sometimes Rebecca would smile, thank me, and even enjoy herself. But more often than not, it felt like nothing changed. Her version of intimacy was sitting together quietly, watching a show. Mine was reaching out, trying to connect. I kept waiting for her to meet me halfway, but she rarely did. Eventually, I started to wonder if maybe I was the problem. Things shifted when her sister came to live with us. We were about 2 years into our marriage, and I was still holding on, still trying to fix what felt off between us. Rebecca came to me one evening, her voice soft and full of concern. Her sister's marriage had collapsed, and she needed a place to stay. I already knew about her situation. Everyone did. Her husband was a domineering man, loud and manipulative. Their relationship had become toxic long ago, and though we all saw it coming, her sister insisted she was fine, until she couldn't pretend anymore. After they split, she tried to get back on her feet. She got an apartment in the settlement, but money was tight, and eventually she lost it. The bank took the place. That's when Rebecca asked if she could move in with us, just for a while. I hesitated. I knew this would alter our home dynamic. But when I looked at Rebecca and saw the genuine concern in her face, I agreed. She arrived 2 days later with just a couple of bags, dressed in jeans and a hoodie that swallowed her. We gave her the guest room. She hugged Rebecca tightly and gave me a quiet, sincere thanks. I couldn't have known then how much that moment would change everything. Rebecca's sister was nothing like her. Not in personality, not in energy, not in presence. While Rebecca was composed and calm, her sister was lively, outspoken, and full of sarcasm. She didn't care about appearances or social niceties. She filled the space around her with humor and lightness, even in the darkest moments. She walked around barefoot in old t-shirts, never seemed to dress up for anyone's approval, but it never felt inappropriate. She was just unapologetically herself. I didn't think I'd connect with her at all. I assumed her presence would become uncomfortable over time, like an overstayed guest. But it wasn't like that. We started talking. More than I expected. I found myself opening up to her, sharing things I hadn't even been able to express to my own wife. And she listened, not just with her ears, but like she truly saw me. Meanwhile, the disconnect between me and Rebecca grew. One quiet night after dinner, I decided to talk to her about what had been missing. We were in the living room. I sat across from her, searching for the right words. I finally asked if we could talk about our physical relationship. She didn't look surprised, just tired. "Ryan," she said, avoiding my eyes. "I don't know what's wrong. I've tried. But I don't feel anything anymore when you touch me. It's like my body's just shut down. I'm not turned on. Not by you. Maybe not by anyone." Her voice was low, filled with resignation. It didn't sound like an excuse. It sounded like the truth, raw and unfiltered. I was stunned, sitting there in silence, unsure what to say. That's when we heard footsteps. Her sister stepped into the doorway and looked at both of us. Then, without hesitation, she said, "Then let me." I thought I'd misunderstood her. Maybe it was one of her offhand jokes, but there was no humor in her expression. She was completely serious. I turned to Rebecca, waiting for her to say something, to react, to shut it down, but she didn't. And suddenly, everything that had felt confusing over the past few months began to make a strange kind of sense. The little touches, the teasing, the subtle tension, it hadn't been innocent. We sat there, the three of us, suspended in silence. The air between us had changed, and I knew there was no going back to what things were before. There was no emotion on her face, but she looked composed. Calm, almost too calm. Then, in a quiet voice, she stood up and said, "Let's go to the bedroom." She didn't offer any explanation, didn't give away what she was thinking. I followed, uncertain. The air between us felt dense, like something unsaid was weighing it down. Once the door was closed behind us, she turned and looked me directly in the eyes, her expression deadly serious. "Are you involved with my sister?" she asked. I told her no, that nothing was going on, that nothing had ever happened. But even as I denied it, I saw something shift in her gaze. Not anger, doubt. She didn't accuse me again or argue. She just stared at me for a moment, as if searching for something beyond the words I was saying. And then, without a word, she walked out of the room. The next morning, I noticed something strange. Normally, she'd be up early, already getting ready for work by the time I left. But she was still in bed. When I asked if she wasn't going in, she replied, without looking at me, that she wasn't feeling well. "Just under the weather," she said. I didn't push it. Just told her to rest and headed out. Her sister didn't show up that morning either. But that wasn't unusual. She often stayed up late watching movies or on calls, so sleeping in wasn't new. I assumed she was still in her room. But when I came home that evening, the silence in the house was different, deeper. Something felt off. It took me a few moments to realize what it was. The hallway was uncluttered. The guest room door was wide open. Her sister's belongings were gone. I called out to Rebecca, asked where her sister went. She didn't respond right away. Just kept herself busy with whatever task she was using as a shield. I asked again more directly. Still no clear answer. Eventually, I pieced it together myself. She hadn't stayed home because she was sick. She'd stayed to make sure her sister left. Waited until I was out, then took care of it on her own. After that, something in her shifted. Over the following days, she became more intentional, more present. She'd sit beside me on the couch and lean into me. She'd ask questions she hadn't asked in a long time. Let her head rest on my shoulder as we watched something. She spoke honestly, shared thoughts and feelings that had been buried for months. For the first time in a long while, she was the one reaching out. She opened up about what makes her feel desired, what turns her mind on, what creates emotional and physical connection for her, and what shuts it all down. She didn't just wait for me to lead anymore. She took initiative. Her voice had a tenderness to it I hadn't heard in ages. It felt like she was letting herself be seen again, without the old walls. And to be honest, I didn't expect that one strange, tense conversation, sparked by such an awkward and out-of-the-blue accusation, would be the thing that woke us up. But maybe hearing something so blunt from her own sister snapped her out of something. Maybe it forced her to see things differently, or stirred something in her that had been numb for too long. I can't say for sure, and I never asked. What I do know is that things didn't suddenly become perfect, but they became real again. We laugh more now. We reach for each other more. We stop pretending things will work themselves out, and actually talk through the messy parts. And when we lie in bed at night, there's no more second-guessing whether she wants me near. She tells me. She shows me. Looking back, I'm oddly thankful for the strange path we took to get here. Without it, we might have drifted too far. Maybe this is a reminder, for anyone who needs it, that connection isn't always lost. Sometimes it's just waiting. Waiting for someone to start rebuilding. One piece at a time.